That's my dog in the background. You see him? See his tail? Hi, Ollie. Okay, so now we're going to coil build something. So what I've done is, again, you're going to need a template. So I've drawn the shape that I want my candle holder to be. It's a Tealight, so there needs to be enough room for the Tealight itself, and this is going to be, there's going to be some thickness to the wall, like that, and it's going to shrink about 15%. So you can ask me for help with that calculation, but make sure it's big enough so that when it shrinks 15%, there's still room at the bottom. Okay, so I've drawn the curves, and then I'm just going to cut the top, make my template. Okay, and then I'm going to cut the edges pretty carefully. In the middle is what everybody would think that I'm trying to get them to make, but it's not. These are the pieces that matter. And you can choose whichever one looks best. This one looks best to me. These are the pieces that matter. This is going to be the outside of your project. So the first thing I want to do is cut a piece that's about the size of the bottom of my project. So you're going to have to find a circular object that's just more or less just the right size. If it's a little smaller, that's fine. If it's a little bigger, then that's more of a problem. So smaller is good, bigger is not. Okay. And then I'm just going to, just like in the slab video, I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to cut with my craft tool or whatever you want. This is just handy for somebody who doesn't have something better lying around their house. All right. And I've got, and this is fine. Just a nice circle. It's cream cheese. It's a little hard to work with, but it should be fine. And as always, if your clay's starting to stiffen up, just dunk it in water a little bit. It should feel like nice, soft, fresh clay. And this is where it's really going to matter is with coil work. Okay, so now I've got my base, and I want to start making coils. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a little coil, or a big coil actually, in my hand. And you'll get used to how much clay you need to go kind of around your project. Okay, and I can get rid of the guides because I won't need those. All right, and I'm just going to clean up this little bit of extra clay, stick it back here, and as I said, always zip up my clay when I'm done. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my hand. You don't want to press hard. You're just sort of rolling it back and forth. And actually, I'm going to go this way. You're just kind of rolling it back and forth. And what I do is and this will take some practice. Everybody gets it. A lot of people don't get it right at first. And I won't be there to help you, so you're just going to have to practice until you get it. And, you know, I have such smaller expectations in terms of the amount of work you're going to produce in the end that you have plenty of time to do this. So just be gentle, roll it back and forth, don't press hard, and as you get close to being finished, as you get close to being finished, you can tear off any extra, and then just look. If there's kind of a fat spot, thin it out. If there's kind of a thin spot, avoid it, and you want to get it to about this thickness. So thinner than my pinky for some of you with less Fred Flintstone hands than mine. You might want to get it just your pinky. And this is a good coil. It's reasonably consistent. You really want to start with a good coil. The more time you spend making a good coil, the less time you'll spend later. Okay? And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this guy around, and I'm going to make sure there's a little more than enough, and then pinch off the excess and just stick it back in my bag. Always get used to sticking things back in your bag. All right. And now I'm going out. So what I'm going to do is I am going to lay this so that it's on the edge of the circle but going beyond it, okay? Because I'm going out, so I want it to go outwards. And then I'm just taking a little bit of clay and smushing down. So you only want to get like the first half at most of the coil. If you go down from the top, then you're going to ruin your coil and it won't be a nice coil. And the big thing here, a lot of people want to pinch. So you're never pinching, you're smushing. And again, you're on your own. When I'm walking around class, I can see people pinching and I can stop them. You just may end up starting and over and a couple times until you finally get out of the habit of pinching. Okay? And then at the end, I'm just going to smush these together gently. And don't try to make this perfect right now. I will show you how to make it perfect later. Just make sure you've smushed it down. And again, so see, I haven't touched the top of this at all, except where I smushed the ends together. I haven't touched the top of this at all. So it's just a nice, it's still the same coil at the top. I've just smushed down a little bit of clay from the bottom to the next level. And don't worry about the inside for now. I'll show you what to do with that next, okay? So now again, I'm gonna make another coil. So I'm gonna start with a little handmade coil like this, and then I'm just going to start rolling it out. Notice how I'm moving my hand kind of back and forth along here as I go, and I can tell, you'll just learn this over time, I can tell this is way more clay than I need. And you want to make these pretty thin. In class, when I do a project, it's a bigger project and we use thicker coils, so people have an easier time learning it. And again, so see, now that I'm getting close, I'm sort of looking and seeing, and make sure you really roll it or it's going to get flat. So make sure you really roll the coil. It was starting to flatten up, and I'm just stretching it out little by little. And I can't make this look like a beginner. So it will be harder for you, I'm sure, but practice, everybody gets it. Just not everybody gets it the first coil, okay? So once again, I'm still coming out. So I'm just gonna lay this on there a little over the edge and then just cut off the extra, put it back in the bag, close up the bag, okay? And you don't wanna link these up at the beginning. So once again, I'm putting it on the outside edge because I want it to start coming outward. And I'm just smushing that last little bit of the bottom half of the coil into the next level. And see, what I'm doing is I'm making it thicker at the bottom where it needs to be to hold up the weight of the project. Okay, just a little bit at a time. This will be harder for you. You may have to restart a few times. If it takes you a week to get to this point, that's perfectly fine. And of course, I can, watch you on camera at some point. Okay, so now that I've got two, I can smush down in the inside too. So again, I'm trying not to touch the top, and I'm never pinching. Okay, just very gently and carefully. Looks like I'm going fast, but I'm really not going very fast. There I got caught a little more of the coil than I would have liked to. So just as little coil as you need. And when you're doing the inside, I'll show you a little tip here. If you can't get it to come all the way down, you can just take a little bit of clay and just fill in the gaps with just little bits of clay. Don't worry if this is pretty inside yet. We'll work on that later. I mean, the more careful you are now, the less work you'll have later. But it's cream cheese right now. It's really hard to work with and make it pretty. And I find that the people who have the hardest time at this stage are people who want to make it perfect and they overwork the clay. So that's another one of my tips is don't overwork the clay. Just get the coil on there, let it be ugly. If you overwork the clay, it also stretches it out and it kind of turns into a lasagna noodle instead of a dish. So just let it stay ugly like that. Okay, I'm gonna make another coil and then I'll show you how this guy works because this is a really important tool. Okay, so once again, I'm just rolling this back and forth in my hand. They're getting a little, it's getting wider, so my coils are gonna have to be a little bit longer. If you make a coil that doesn't go all the way around, it's okay to make two coils for one level and just connect them. It's fine. It's just cream cheese at this stage. It's never gonna be perfect. Okay. And then while I was kneeling, I find it much easier to roll coils while I'm standing up. And you don't have to do this on your plastic bag on your board. You could just do this on a piece of cardboard if you find that easier too. Okay, so now I've got my next coil. I'm gonna wrap it around. Looks like it's just about the right length. And I'm just gonna smush it down one more time so that I can show you the template, and I can explain the next step. So once again, I'm just taking a little bit of the clay from the bottom and just smushing it down, never pinching, never going to the top and smushing down, just grabbing a little bit of clay and smushing down. That's enough to make it stick together. And same on the inside, just a little bit of clay. If you need to add clay in this stage, little bits to make it connect, feel free. What you don't want to have is any cracks, because later they will possibly reappear and ruin your project. Okay, so just smushing down, smushing down. All right. And like I said, I've got a little gap right there. I'm just going to fill it with a little bit of clay. All right. So don't work it. Don't do what I'm doing right now. Just try to leave it alone as much as possible, because it will stretch out and it will get all messed up. Okay, so now that's the next step is what this is for. So I think I've been making something like this, but I don't know. And the only way to really get things symmetrical is to push this down straight on the ground and get your head at the level it is, and then just press the clay right up against it and make sure the clay is exactly the same shape. So just press it right up against it so that it matches it. There should be no light between the template and the clay. And you want to do this every couple of, like here it was a little off, so I'm just wiggling it so it gets in. You want to do this every coil or two. Like, don't do it until you've done about 3 coils, but then you want to do this about every coil or 2. And sometimes you need to go around more than once. Always make sure you're pushing it straight down. It's really easy to try to change the angle of the template to match the pot, but you're trying to match the pot to the template, not match the template to the pot. So always keep it flat. And then once it really does seem to be matching all the way around, don't worry, it's going to make these little, I don't know if you can see them, it's going to make these little cut marks in the clay. Don't worry about those. You'll smooth them out later. Okay, so that guarantees that it is symmetrical. If it's matching this shape all the way around, then it's got to be symmetrical. And you'll have a little dish that looks just like that. Okay, and if you look straight down on it, it should seem like it's actually forming a nice, nearly perfect curve. Okay, don't worry if it's absolutely perfect, but you really want to be sure there's no daylight between the template's flat on the ground, no daylight between the template and the clay. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about at this stage is letting it firm up. So at this stage, it's starting to get kind of floppy. And if I add more clay, eventually it is going to turn into kind of a lasagna noodle. So once it starts to get floppy on you, and you'll know what I mean, like as I move this, it's wiggling all the way over here. When I move this, it's like wiggling, it's making it wiggle in other places. So you want it to stiffen up, not really till it's leather hard, but at least until it's firm. And usually that'll take about an hour or so. So generally, I would say 3 coils is about as much as you can do on this project right now. So get the 3 coils on there and then just set it aside. Don't forget it. You want to definitely cover it up within an hour or 2 once it starts to feel more like a putty and less like a noodle. Once it stiffens up a little bit, but you don't want it to get rock hard. So try to check it every now and then, press it, and you'll see when it stiffens. I'll show it on the video. Obviously, I'm going to pause. I'm not going to make you watch this for hours. Firming up. Once it's firmed up, I'll show you the difference that it's still movable. It's not rock hard, but it stiffens up. So otherwise, you're going to ruin it and you're going to have to start all over again. And that's not the end of the world. That just may be the way things work when you're learning clay remotely. So again, get all your clay back in the bag, zip it up. If it's starting to firm up a little more than you'd like and you're having trouble making coils because of that, make sure you sprinkle in a tiny bit of water, grab any little bits of clay off your tools and get them back in your bag. Throw this in the trash or back in the bag depending on what you need. Okay? Thank you very much.